Voltern. A small world, roughly in the middle of the core, covered in a deep blue ocean. Perfect dumping ground for 1 million refugees from the other worlds, floating around on huge rafts woven from half-baked local fauna. This was no way to live, I assure you. It was the civilizational equivalent of a load of empty plastic bottles being dragged around on ocean currents. Naturally, one of these bottles was the IEC's theoretical headquarters, more accurately called a shipping container with solar panels tied to it. But after a long but felt short voyage among the stars, the government dictatocrats being paid to pretend to run the whole show had called their prison labour back in. Hence, the IECS Gargandua plonked back home into the orbital shipyard from which it had been, as they say, salvaged. In the Dictat's gleaming office, in a pencil-thin tower overlooking the dock, the two-person security team was hard at work processing the coming and going of traffic. "Who's that coming in then?" the male one said. "Remember the interfactional exploration concern?" the female one said. "Wasn't it innate factual eggs-floor ratio concert?" "Oh really? Well, they're back." "Back from where then?" "I think they're trying to explore the sector to uncover the mysteries of the collapse and save us from the inevitability of dying alone." "Nice. Did they succeed?" "Looks like they've been on fire. Shame." "Oh well, you know what I say. Play with the mysteries of the collapse and inevitability of dying alone, and you get burned." "I usually hate it when you say that, but now it actually makes sense. Although it was me that said it." "Yeah, but if you're saying something that I think I say, then we might as well just say that I said it, shouldn't we? That's actually what they call the butterfly effect." "So you're saying that if you once said hello to me and I encountered the absolutely perfect situation for me to say hello to someone else, when I actually say hello, I should also note to my listener that you should get the credit for developing this linguistic marvel that we're all enjoying with your generous patronage." Hello?" Ryman's voice said over the radio. "It's a moot point because I've never said hello to you. I say, good, insert appropriate time of day here, because I'm not an actual child." "A child? Are you saying people who say hello must be children? Did the latest monthly email from the New Frontiers of Prejudice Society come up with a new way to be a ruddy great stinker? And you wanted to try it out here on me, your professional colleague? This is worse than that debacle with the non-vegan turkey on rice sandwich, Mark." Listening carefully and none too soberly, Ryman decided not to say hello again. It will astound you to hear that he eventually got clearance to dock and proceeded by shuttle to the planet's surface. The ground crews all said good morning as the spacers disembarked. The New Frontiers of Prejudice Society was a big deal on Voltern, no doubts about it. Ryman travelled with the Olympus siblings at his side, for they were to pay a visit to their real father, Admiral Olympus. First, they went to the IEC office/shipping container bobbing in the ocean, and found a note on the door that the meeting had been moved to an actual ship. It was a 1,000-mile flight to get there, giving plenty of chances to witness the strings of civilizational flotsam all over the planet. "It's war, kiddies," Daddy Olympus said of this once all were lounged on his luxury yacht. "Of the suitably peaceful and hopeful nature, I assume," Ryman snarked. "Nay." "Ah well, treaties only get you so far." "Tell me something, scientist. Is it true that we are the only ones left?" Well, we don't have any signals to the contrary, but the domain sectors aren't very close together in real space, so really." "It's been 200 cycles. Not only has no one come to rescue us, but we have heard nothing from anyone. That means the galaxy is dead as dust." "Oh, that's not very peaceful and hopeful of you at all, Admiral. I mean, we're still alive, aren't we?" "Don't answer that. One imagines that the more stable places, like Margin Sector, they must be doing okay even without the gates." "You think places with more weapons, more ships, more antimatter are more likely to stay alive?" "Well, not really, no. But I am the Pope, you know. Nice to pretend people are doing alright on my watch, somewhere out there." "It's nonsense. Don't you agree, Allison?" "I agree entirely, Daddy," Allison chirped. "And Ra?" "Everyone's dead but me, and I'll be the last one standing," Ra said, his head in a tripod. "Exactly right, my son. That's what everyone in this sector's got stuck in their heads." Ryman desperately wanted to alert Ra to this paternal approval, but Ra was busy being a useless lout. So instead, he imagined his own supervisor in the old academy days being so warm and compassionate as to call something exactly right. So Admiral, he Freuded. Are you going to ask us to stop the war? Actually, we were thinking of taking over the universe for ourselves, favor for a friend. You have a high opinion of yourself, and I respect that immensely, Captain. The Admiral nodded. Remember, Ryman, he's not your real dad. Yet I fear, even to the combined might of you and my beautiful children, this task is beyond you. Our fate here is to die like everyone else already has. That's the way we must think of things, be it true or nay. So what are we to do? We are to turn to our treaty obligations, to peace and hope, to you, my children. This was getting out of hand, but Ryman nodded respectfully, concealing his internal meltdown. Anything you need, my good sir, he managed to say. It is simple. It is time to rebuild human civilization, away from all this, from the core, away from these grievances, a place where all are welcome and peace and hope reign. You must build a new paradise. You already know this sector is full of terraformed planets. The machines never got them all. That has been enough hope for me to get this far. Now you must turn promise into practice. It is time for humankind to colonize the stars once more. The Admiral stood from his recliner as he said this, looking out to sea in an instantly ennobling vista. Yeah, I'll get a job, whatever. Ra dismissed him. Oh, don't be silly, Ra. You have a job, Allison said. And I would love to colonize the stars, Daddy. I haven't colonized anything in ages. Actually, can we take the yacht? It's so comfy. You want my ship? The Admiral balked, after which he gave a hearty laugh. He never gives us anything, Ra claimed before storming off, which involved moving only a short distance to the other side of the deck, as you must understand. Oh, I'll give you my ship all right. That one! He shouted daddily with a paternal grin. He was pointing at the sky. Nothing was there. A little disappointing, but he'd shouted it so daddily that Ryman was sure the Admiral could be trusted implicitly. And as always, Ryman was right. I've got a lot of new crew to discipline, Contreras said with shimmering lips. Why was Ryman staring at her lips? Must be some mistake. He was actually looking right past her at the enormous fleet gathering at the Volturn docks. This was some time after the Admiral had pointed at the sky dramatically, but it had indeed been the case that his finger perfectly vectored towards one particular ship among the gathering group, the Executor-class Lion battlecruiser, his own flagship. It was scaly, grey-silver in colour, with a pointy aft, round body, and outwards flare at the stern. It looked exactly like an absolutely massive fish. And it's all yours, Captain, the Admiral said with a clap on Ryman's shoulder. This stirred him from his staring. That's fantastic, but can you really spare it? He asked. You underestimate your importance. Sundaria is a weak government. When the big boys fight, we'll go under. And all those refugees down there. I don't know what will happen. Actually, scratch that, I know precisely. It will all go the way of the rest of humanity, won't it? So this fleet of yours is going to be the most important ever assembled. You will have people from all over the sector, and all the supplies we can muster. Go and make a refuge for the tired and weary masses. Go and make me proud of us all. Thanks for choosing me, Ryman immediately said, not necessarily in direct response. I think it was the justice system that chose you, was it not? No, I actually got let off. Good behaviour, heroics, all that. Then dare I ask why you are still here, carrying out your sentence? You're in love with someone, aren't you? The Admiral suddenly accused. Yep, here we go. Wait a minute. Is it Allison, my clever little girl? I mean, she's so clever in a different sort of way, and so little in a tall sort of way. Is it Ra, my true heir, my adventuring jack of all trades? I mean, he really likes you, and he's certainly a jack something or other. Excuse me, Admiral, Contreras intervened. It is not in your remit to administer the interpersonal relationships of our crew. Is it not? And whose remit might that be? The Admiral asked. Mine. Love is a resource, and we must manage its use with care. Do not idly plant ideas of love in the captain's fragile, fragile mind. I shall tend to it with the care it deserves." "I see. And who might you be?" "The treasurer," Contreras said, decisively walking off after dropping that bomb. Shame it didn't explode. "I see. So, Captain, you are to deal with my problems and your own. And on your own volition. I think, seeing you've come this far, makes me think it would not be such a bad thing to have you join our family after all." Thanks, sure. I mean, I think it'd have to be Allison rather than Ra, but then, Dad, I'm like her dad. No, I'm old enough to be her dad, so saving humanity, is it? Yeah, we better get started then, or we'll all be needing the bathroom before we get there. Can't flush in hyperspace, Captain Ryman? "Yeah, man," Ryman said, his attempt at peeling off instantly crushed. "Your treasurer, she doesn't love you back." "What?" "She's a tritachyon. She's using your feelings like a resource. She wants you to work hard. She wants the crew to get along. She is doing her job. It doesn't last beyond the end of the contract. Trust me. Allison and Ra had a mother once." "Ah, right. I will keep that in mind." "You most certainly will. I shall contact you once the colony fleet is fully assembled. Make sure all your affairs are in order." Ryman thought his affairs were in order already, but now that the Admiral said it, he noticed he was an absolute mess of a man. He even felt that he needed to bond with Ra over this experience. What on earth had got him here? And what was all that about Contreras using him for his bodily resources? It certainly sounded like her, yet surely there was more to it than that. Here's a welcome distraction from such matters: business. Not the business concerning the anti-universe, but the more pressing business concerning the anti-anti-universe in which all are cursed to live and love, as Ryman put it in his next captain's log. As the crew enjoyed R&R, don't worry about what these stand for, ships from all over the sector blasted to a halt at the Volturn docks. Word had gotten around that some idiots were going to try and colonize an outer sector planet, surely leading to all of their deaths. As it happens, every government, planet, city, street, and family had someone they wouldn't mind killing off in an innocent and peace and hope flavoured fashion. Hence the pool for people who could be donated to IEC service was expanded from just prisoners, now including anyone who so much as laughed abrasively within earshot of a bureaucrat high on the power of peace and hopium, or maybe it was just power. Wayward flocks of the Luds, redundants of Tritachyon, dissidents of the Persian League, deviants of hegemony, and from the Sandarian Diktat, bowlfuls of the refugees they had been collecting over the years in their role as the slightly more neutral than the rest polity of the bunch. Mix in a few penniless pirates, identity-switching death rowers, failed-grade Galatians, and one or two good honest people who wanted to make the project work for the salvagation of humanity, and you've got a real civilization in a bottle right there. A Molotov cocktail, to be precise. And with the worthless masses came useful things too. Transports, freighters, and most importantly, the huge fuel tankers needed to move all this 10 minutes/2 months into deep space. Now add in a light escort of Tritachyon destroyers, Ludic fighter wings on Persian carriers, Hegemony's heavy metal cruisers, and the Sandarian executor battleship dwarfing them all. Ryman, of charges dropped for political reasons acclaim, was supposed to lead one of the largest assemblies of spaceships of the last 200 cycles. Equipment and supplies valued at tens of millions of Persian credits. Crew and colonists valued at something akin to a rounding error. Humanity wasn't going to get a second chance at this, and so who better to lead them than a man on his 5th or 6th chance at least? How was Ryman coping with this? He was opening new bank accounts and creating a website to handle large sums of faster-than-tax credit transfers. Oh yes. You see, after hearing of the planets under colonial consideration, which we'll get to soon in several senses, Ryman had been practicing his trained profession, hyperspace topography. You might remember that his personal theories on how to properly chart hyperspace courses had borne some fruit in the past. Personal theories that essentially assumed that the anti-universe existed, and worked the maths out from there. He'd done the same for the route from various core planets to the colony sites, given that this information was going to be worth a heck of a lot of money. When the money number goes up, That's good maths. However, something was wrong with this plan, and as usual, it was something to do with this foul business concerning the anti-universe. In recent cycles, hyperspace had been a rather violent place. The usual cloud-like hyperstorms were raging all over, and the currents and flows of the space-like, time-like medium were getting faster and faster. Huge rips would sometimes appear out of thin air, forcing all in their path to be launched to distant locations. Rips like those which claws might make. No, there's probably no connection to that old rubbish the Luddic Path have been preaching lately, is there? Great wands, grade wands, gravied waffles. Ryman had an open mind and a closed navigation data store. It was a nice idea while it lasted, much like the universe itself. The upshot of all that was Ryman's business never got off the hyperground, and instead he would have to content himself with his salary as captain of the fleet, paid in oxygen, as per Contreras' cunning tariff-touting accounting schemes. Hence he took a deep, luxurious breath at the taxpayers' expense, held it until Contreras gave him the okay to let it out, and gave the order to launch the expedition that would save the entire universe. Or some of it. For a while. For some people, possibly. Huzzah! Cut to somewhere in the Nova Sidonian Nebula. I'm sure you know where I mean. Star Zeta, Planet 3. One of the reams of stellar bodies the IEC had charted in their travels. Why had the governments of the sector selected this as a colony site? Because all the data on why it shouldn't be colonized was accidentally unexisted by a time explosion. Time explosion, you ask? Yes, I just explained how it all works again. I know you're struggling with this. So now you know exactly why most information on this planet said it was just a nice blue water world like Volturn, not terraformed entirely, but somewhat habitable if you brought boats. And look at that, spaceships are also watertight, so that saves on building costs if you plop them down and call it a day. What else did the sector expect of them? Ah yes, they expected them all to die. But there'll be time for that later, especially when you factor in how the Domain-era time torpedo array guarding this system was still just as active as it had been the first time the Gargantua swept past. There was some consternation about committing humanity's future to a place where time didn't work properly, and remnant AI scouts were forever probing to see if they could get past those aging defenses. But luckily, when you're out of fuel, engines ablaze because someone unexisted the time you spent cycling cooling water, crash landing a massive civilian fleet into the sea of a leftover planet, you just have to take ownership of the situation and put on a smile. Another happy... Ryman tried to say, before collapsing to the floor under the weight of not only the usual Contreras coil, but also the massive amount of passengers the Gargantua's bridge had taken on. It was standing room only, although now it was proved that you could still lie down if you didn't mind forming piles. And who doesn't mind forming piles? These people were essentially additional bridge staff provided by the many governments now invested knee-deep in IEC business, and hence the IEC was to be knee-deep in agents, spies, and dangerously Contreras-y assessors. Comfy to lie on in a pinch, but too pinchy to rely on. Let's follow the captain's lead and stow them into the ignoring this part of reality bin. Instead, let's once again lament the lack of windows on the Gargantua's bridge and get the cameras to reveal the situation outside. It was a sunny day on Planet 3. 10,000 people had made planetfall, and the time torpedoes guarding the system didn't fancy coming after them. All was still, and the air was registering as very much breathable by anyone human enough to need it. Peaceful? Hopeful? Perhaps this wasn't such a bad idea after all. Most of the fleet was afloat, and the parts that sunk were still visible through the pristine water. The sea, despite covering the entire planet, wasn't very deep. Why? Because the deep parts hadn't been made yet. This planet was a built-from-scratch colony world, the premium kind that was supposed to be perfectly shaped into continents that maximized areas with good weather and economic opportunity. But doing that required extensive use of underground machines called movers, and they had all been deliberately disabled back in the collapse days on account of them being artificially intelligent. Just remember they're around for later. For now, a world of shallow, coral-strewn seas, voyaging space sailors, and temperate aquaculture life awaited. Oh wait, that's not how this story ends. It actually keeps going with nothing less than a large series of explosions. What now? Ryman was moaning before the rumbling was over. Captain, It has been 47 seconds since the completion of the previous crisis. If you are not sufficiently refreshed to face another, then your respiration rate is too low, Contreras advised. Lieutenant, you're my crisis every moment of the day. Wow, I like the sound of that. I didn't... Titanian and Company, shields, and a report, and if everyone could at least pretend to be doing some work, that would be grand. Titanian was quick to report that the fleet's flux shields didn't work while on/under water. This discovery was quickly noted down by the 5 extra security attachés Titanian was now ganged up with. This gaggle stood forever at his side, always arranged shortest to tallest, openly spying on all the fleet's military matters, on behalf of various governments/government-like businesses/government-like religions/not government-like gangs. The only positive was that Ryman was skimming half their salaries to pay the debt he was accruing to the Galatia Academy by renting an office there. If you were wondering, that's where the rogue AI core and related paraphernalia were being lazily hidden. I'm sure we'll get back to that. For now, though, explosions. They hadn't stopped the whole time I've been expositing, and it's about time someone found out where they were coming from. There's a ruddy large set of boats out there, Noah, Allison reported. Maybe Daddy sent us the yacht after all. From which he arranged for us to be bombarded with rockets? Ryman asked. He's a very strange man. I say, let them have their fun. Ah, a woman of strategy. Lieutenant Titanian, have you an alternative? Run away, sir, Titanian said, as if it was entirely obvious. Ah, a man of practicality. It is a shame the practical details of our predicament preclude such pertinacity. By the way, Ryman was very stressed right now. Captain, I'm on one of the boats, Ra's voice reported. Lieutenant Olympus the Younger, I don't believe you, but I thank you for your vacuous contribution to this discussion all the same. I'm serious. I was in the torpedo tubes, and someone tried to fire it, and it was great fun, and I ended up over... Look here, take the microphone and say something to them. Ra was apparently speaking to someone with him. Said someone spoke. Foul demons of the sky, prepare to meet your doom. This guy's so wacky, it's mad over here, Ra added. You wouldn't happen to be a lost civilization of boat people who still hold out hope for a rescue by the disciples of the mighty Lud, would you? Ryman asked, with both hands massaging his entire face. Yes, the voice meekly replied. Contreras. It's on the list. Contingency 18 Gamma Gamma Whoopie, Contreras said. And what is the protocol? We are to adopt their religion and lifestyle, praise Lud, and convert the planet into a temple to the divinity of Lud et al., praise Lud. And who wrote these protocols? Anyone interested. I believe it was a form of wiki system. And there's a computer in the emergency spacesuit locker, isn't there? Yes. Exactly as Lud wills, then. And what happens if we don't follow protocol? I am authorized to kill you. But you won't, will you? It would bring me great sadness. But Captain, I am a woman of my word. And every word's a poem, eh? Don't flirt with me. It only makes things harder. Please, don't say anything else. However you prefer it. They were talking about executing Ryman, by the way. Luckily, Ryman decided that he wasn't going to die on this wet hill of variable position and elevation. We're talking about waves in the sea, by the way. Eventually, the demolition of the colony fleet was put on hold for a parley, somehow organised by the occasionally universe-saving antics of Ra Olympus. The locals weren't hugely happy about the idea of letting the high and mighty core folk sail their space-phibious hulks around like they owned the place. However, deeds to the place were actually for sale. The price? Kill those people we don't like 3 time zones that away. Yes, once again, this planet had its own epic dramas and detailed history that we shall strategically ignore. We shall touch only upon the fact that the IEC was able to win the right to lay anchor in certain parts of the sea by launching Thor out with 100 bombercraft to shock and awe a bunch of infighting coral farmers into compliance. Thus, an endless aquatic guerrilla war against the colonists was commenced, or uncertain alliance, as Ryman dryly mind-worded into the official report. And that was a job well done. Contreras, despite being a woman of her sultry word, didn't execute Ryman. Not physically, at least. She did keep her promise to the wiki warriors Thor and Wens. she broadcast back to the core, declaring that the planet was a spiritual sanctuary dedicated to the 5th New Ludic Church cult of the week, focused on living in such a way that one does not produce many beta neutrinos. What does that mean exactly? Whatever the IEC wanted it to mean. Do recall that Contreras wanted to conquer the universe in order to secure the cooperation of humanity in saving the universe from the anti-universe. Oh, that's what this is all about, you ask? I thought it was all just a weird kind of flirting to get Ryman to do whatever she wanted. Hark, I never said it wasn't that as well. She named the planet the Holy See, very clever, and invited anyone with enough money to pay the monthly tithe to join the endless civil war, boat parties and seaweed dinners. Humanity needed a new colony, and no one said it couldn't also be a thinly stretched front for a private landlording scheme / cult. In fact, on the money side of things, it really helps if it is a scam of some description. So, with hope that this new one-way holiday club might make some money, the Gargandua and company planned their escape while the going was good. The Executor battlecruiser used its hefty tractor beam to drag some of the crash fleet back to orbit, leaving Gigabishop Thor and Cardinal Commandant Wenz to oversee operations. A bad idea, all were well aware, but if you're averse to bad ideas, you, as I keep reminding you, have come to the wrong sector. Now, part of the hurry to leave was that the IEC Grand Commissioning Council, i.e. a cloud computing calendar app server floating in the Sea of Volturn with 1234 as the administrator password, had scheduled another colonial venture in the same run. The scam wasn't complete yet. Hence the remains of the fleet sat in the shadow of the Holy See to hide from the time torpedoes while desalinating the water they'd taken on down there to replace all the fried coolant. Then off they blasted towards a hyperhole in the outer reaches of the system, quite literally not even giving the domain authorities near the star the time of day. Later we'll see how that strange step towards saving all humanity goes. First, here's the new step, and one with figurative boots on, for we're moving from the shining seas to a place of squelching, hot, humid filth. But don't get too excited. I'm talking about the superior colonial prospect 30 seconds east as the Crow hyperdrives, in the Cadmus system, awaited the planet Echion. That it had an actual name spoke to it being a fully terraformed world. That its name sounded like someone vomiting spoke to it being a disease-ridden tropical nightmare of the aforementioned squelching hot humid filth predisposition. Yes, a dramatic step up from the conditions on the average spaceship, about on par with Contreras' quarters, and only marginally less desirable than the half-terraformed core worlds. But with a little TLC, teeming with Leech's colonists, it could be a place where a new trunk of humanity could grow. And all for the low, low price of whatever the IEC can get away with charging. Since people quite literally couldn't afford not to take this deal, a more serious effort at building a civilization was now to begin. The fleet was set in orbit over the planet, and planning meetings were held with about 70% less imperiled screaming than in the rapid crash colonization of the Holy See. It was eventually agreed that not everyone who was sent down to the surface would die immediately, and at least some people would probably make a convincing lean-to out of sticks and odd pieces of corrugated steel the fleet frisbeed down from space. It was all very pitiful, but it was an astounding stride better than nothing, if one remembers that even the stride of an ant could plausibly astound in the right circumstances. Amid the gradual lowering of cargo cables and crew life expectancy, Ryman heard a knock on the door of his cell, or now just his quarters technically. He wiped the biscuit crumbs off his shirt, bed, floor, mirror, hands, scalp, and finally the door controls. Yet he groomed his nest for nothing. It was only Mars Nessus, one of the new officers. He was a Persian League talk silo, or diplomat as he might be called, were he not banished to the IEC on charges of trying to convert a Lud out of their tech phobia through the use of certain scintillating machines, of which he was a former salesman. Indeed, Ryman was better off staying ungroomed for this visitor, who now served time as the Gargantua's counselor, therapist, HR slug, and general oxygen to carbon dioxide conversion terminal. "This was all your clever plan, wasn't it, Captain?" Mars accused Ryman, with no particular context provided. "No, Mr. Nessus," Ryman exploded in disappointment. He had both hoped and feared for a rather different kind of visit, you see, hence the crumb scrubbing. For if you have assessed any quality of mine, that means you believe you have understood said quality, and I have in my possession full knowledge that such understanding is beyond the scope of a man who believes that coming to the door of his superior in the middle of highly important operations, with nothing more prudent to provide than some self-taught wry banter about the nature of ongoing goings-on, that would be going much better were you to keep your Casimus gob wrapped around the mysteriously warm cylinder of metal that was in your gargling embrace only moments before you had the breakthrough idea of threatening the very fate of the universe with your inane interruption. Captain, some people say here that you are very hard to make a good first impression on. I am very busy, Mr. Nessus. I thought you were eating biscuits and hiding from the treasurer. There's no way you could... This allegation is entirely... Look, what about me is so clever then? Your handling of the Luds. Marvellous, really. We are zeroing in on the context you think your mere presence exudes, with now only a few more words required to actually enable you to begin making a specific point. I, for one, am excited. Are you done? I am doing... Then do carry on. I am referring, of course, to how you have strategically placed the primary colonial interest of the Luds in a state of fascination yet simultaneous isolation. The Holy See. Genius. Because I was most concerned with the risk of Luddic path terrorism, since this project of ours is so likely to be undermined by its reliance on some most deviant technology. Yes, that it is, and that's only the start of it, Mr. Nessus. I dare say those domain defences will keep the Luds safe from others, and us safe from their gallivanting. It's all so perfect. Industrial civilization here, and the rustic there. Between two brand new planets to cover with our respective spheres, I think you have adroitly neutralised much of the threat to stability we in the Persian diplomatic cadre were concerned about. And I did it all for you, Mr. Nessus, so I'm very happy to hear of your concerns, especially at this critical hour of personal time, at my very door. If only my concerns about the strange machines you keep in your quarters would be so adroitly neutralised, I think this universe might know peace. Oh, you'll come around to it, Captain. You'll have to if you want to keep having your quarry, such as the inevitability and deterministic certainty of a process carried out by a machine. Yes. What? Not unlike another machine of certainty that brings me to your door today, that of AI. Not a problem. I'm as expert with AI as I am with Luds. I can't even tell you the full extent of it. You mean the dormant AI core you keep in captivity, to which you gave a promise of conquering the universe to fulfill its hardly understood desires? That was to Lieutenant Contreras, actually. The wording's dead on, though. So she's been blabbing. She talks about you all the time. But, really? Oh, Captain, you are a machine of certainty yourself, you know. I think that bodes well. I literally don't know what you're talking about. You needn't. I have that covered just fine. So if you say you're going to take adequate care with the AI threat, I will leave that to you. With the Luds turned aside, you are one step closer to your goals. I dare say even in this oh-so-critical biscuit-fueled alone time. I only asked because I wanted to know if I would be working for someone who was willing to really go outside of their comfort zone to achieve great things. Well now I know exactly what you mean, Mr. Nessus, Ryman lied. I think I will manage my zones personally. Your life is your own, you think, so I shall concede the floor to my counterpoint. She is coming to the stand with testimony that, by the lay of her face, shall strike terror beyond that of the leathery Luddic bosoms of yore. What are you talking about? She's here. Nessus was replaced at the door with Contreras. She had not the civility to remain at the boundary, blasting into Ryman's precious comfort zone in a hurricane of unaccounted-for biscuit dust. It's over, she said. Ryman went supernova calmly. Oh, and here I was thinking it had hardly begun. Do look at what she is holding, El Capitan, Nessus's voice echoed down the hall. Contreras was holding two tripads, gripped in two pairs of fingers on the same hand. One was displaying the number 0 beside a small scored C. That, to those familiar with such things, was the telltale cry of an empty bank account. The other displayed an image of a package of biscuits slowly rotating, its deep red packaging and ornate design betraying its fancy price point. At this, Ryman was forced to look Contreras in those steely grey carbon fibre corneas. This can only be rectified by the spilling of forsaken blood, she stated. Ryman's supernova slumped down into a white dwarf. But let me tell you now that Ryman survived this encounter because Contreras was referring to the bountied and bountiful blood of a certain piratical individual. An individual who held the dubious honour of being the worst enemy of the illustrious, industrious, don't mind the rustiest Olympus clan. Therefore, next I will tell you how the IEC was made to turn its hand to the sector's #1 pastime, war.